Sharania doing a fantabulous job. He is pretty much the only guy doing it right now, but he's making sure that everything is dialed in and everyone knows what's going on in the free agent market. But again, none of those deals, as a lot of you should know, not a lot of those deals do not go final until July 6th, when officially they can put pen to paper. Right. So there is a little bit of a leeway here. This is your little moratorium period as everyone has their conversations, but there has been lots and lots and lots and lots of deals that have been already going down. And we're going to get to all of them throughout the day. Hopefully some more can happen during the show that we can talk about. I know if you were just listening to me and Chad on the Rip City Drive, we were talking a lot about Luke Kennard and how he would make a lot of sense with that MLE that the Blazers have after buying out DeAndre Ayton. But it did just get reported by Shams that he is signing with the Atlanta Hawks. So there's another name off of the board. But let's do this order of operations, right? It is the sports version of PEMDAS, but we're starting with the draft and then we're hitting free agency, because it was last week that the Blazers entered the NBA draft with the 11th overall pick. And there was a lot of discussion about who the Blazers were going to draft. Was it going to be a small forward, a scorer? Some of the guys they work out, people liked. I was a big fan of Carter Bryant, who happened to be available at 11. But then the Blazers get on the clock and you get breaking news that they had made a deal with the Memphis Grizzlies to drop back to 16. And they also would get a future first-round pick, a 2028 pick, and 2 second-rounders as well. So not a terrible deal, because they kind of replenished the cupboard, right? They went to Fred Meyer, did some shopping, got some canned goods, and then they replenished what they gave to Boston in the Drew Holiday deal. So then all eyes turn to the Blazers at 16. And what were they going to do? There was still a couple players available there at 16 that people liked, right? Some players were slipping. People were looking at like, okay, who is Portland after? This is getting really interesting. And then the Blazers made it more interesting by throwing an absolute curveball to everybody in the draft room, to everybody sitting in the media room, because they definitely went nowhere or somewhere that nobody thought they were going to do. Obviously, Kasparas Giacosionis was available. That's a fun name. I'm going to eventually pronounce it right once, right? He was available at 11 too. A lot of people were eyeing him. Is he the guy, right? I have a lot of people who liked Asa Newell, Chad being one of them. Guess what? It wasn't either one of those guys. It was, at the moment, 19-year-old Yong Hansen from China, 7'1" center. And I said 19 at the time because the very next day was his birthday and he hit the big 2-0. He is a young, big, athletic center. People were throwing around the word Chinese Jokic. That's a lot to put on a young guy coming in. I also think if you're going to try to make the Jokic comparison, Chinese Sabas is just right there, right? Like, go with Sabas. It just makes a lot of sense, right? But no, they pick him at 16, and everyone's mind is kind of blown, right? Why do we need another center? You got Donovan Clingan, you got DeAndre Ayton, you got Robert Williams, you already got Dwight Breith, and now you got Yong Hansen. That is 5 centers there in a crowded room for your Portland Trailblazers. You can take 15 players active on a game day, 5 of them playing center. That is a lot to ask. But again, you looked at his video. The video looked good. He's athletic. He's big. Still a lot to learn. But something that Joe Cronin talked about in the press conference, and when I talked to him after the press conference as well, was knowledge. His basketball IQ, his knowledge of the game is what stood out to them. That's why they scouted this guy for 2 full seasons. They liked what they saw. Right now, Coach Billups was also asked at his introductory press conference on Friday about does he see a situation where you go Twin Towers, right? You play him and Donovan Clingan together, and he's like, no, that's not going to happen. They complement each other, but it's not something we want to do, playing them together, right? But the Blazers got a nice young big who I think is very, very likable. Right. I don't know if you guys saw this, but he goes into a photo booth. They're making all the rookies do the photo booth at the draft. And he sits in there and it takes all the pictures. And it like cuts him off like at the chin. Like he's too big for the photo booth. Right. And he just does it with a smile. And I think he endured himself to everybody when it was at the press conference and he was asked, what is it you like to do outside of basketball? And he's like, it was the first question that he answered in English because he is learning the language, doesn't have his full grasp on it yet, does have an interpreter. As I said to Joe, and Chauncey said that too, like the language of basketball will translate. So they'll get him going, right? But the very first question he answers himself in English, he says, I like to sleep, I like to play my PS5, and I like to eat. Like, he is one of us, guys. He is one of us. Like, we should, the first game he plays, that's what we should chant. One of us, one of us, one of us. And send him links to all our college football dynasties crossplay, right? If you're on Xbox, crossplay works now. Send him out there. He's going to be playing himself playing as himself on 2K, and you know it, right? But he's one of us. He was even talking about basketball, like when he started. He said he started around the age of 13, wasn't very good, didn't really like the game until he experienced winning with his teammates. And that feeling of being in the locker room, winning with your teammates, playing for your team is what drew him back and made him put in the work. So that's the type of player that you do like. I hope they hit. I hope this was a home run, right? They need the depth play in the long run because regardless of what happened with DeAndre Ayton, right, the contract was going to expire next year if they didn't trade him or get off of him. Robert Williams, same. Dwap Reith, same. And next thing you know, they're going to enter next year with only 2 roster centers. So they need that depth, right? And they still believe Donovan Clingan is the guy. I don't think anyone they were drafting in this draft, they were drafting with the intention to be the face of the franchise or the next big thing, right? They needed the depth, right? But if he ends up being better than Donovan Clingan and ends up being your starter, then guess what? You did good. You did good. Now, everyone talked about Portland reaching, and perhaps they did because most mock drafts had him going in the second round or late first round. Jan said himself that he thought he was going in the early 20s, which screams Brooklyn, who was available right there, right? I think they had a lot of interest. They are owned by a very prominent Chinese businessman. So why not, hey, get my team in the forefront of my home country? Makes sense, right? There's rumors that Minnesota was interested as well. They had the 17th pick. So Portland took a reach by most standards, but not a reach by theirs because it was a guy that they liked, right? And of course, the DeAndre Ayton buyout, which we'll talk about a little bit more later in the show, makes sense, right? Absolutely makes sense. And you know what? I keep saying a little bit in later in the show. Let's just talk about it right now. For those of you who aren't in the loop, the Blazers breaking news yesterday about the buyout of DeAndre Ayton. They are going to buy him out of his contract, make him a free agent. And then it was reported today that he took a $10 million less to be bought out. So now Portland will only have $25 million on the books versus $35, and that's a big thing moving forward, and also opens the door for guys like Yong Hansen to get in and play, right? So I like that. I absolutely like that. Kirk chimes in on the YouTube chat. We have 2 future bigs. Both can play defense and rebound and go small at power forward. I don't know if they can both go small at power forward. Definitely not Donovan Clingan. He can't. He cannot do that. He is a true center through and through. You got to look at where they can play defensively, and he cannot get out and play defensively in the paint like a power forward does nowadays. He's a true center. And Jan, I think, has a little bit more of that athleticism to move, but I don't know if he's a power forward either, Kirk. I think you're looking at 2 kind of true centers, big lumbering guys, but you never know. Maybe you can get a little bit, they say no, but I would love a little bit of that David Robinson, Tim Duncan action, right? Like the Twin Towers in San Antonio were amazing. Amazing. Checkered Pass says we need to find the Chinese equivalent to Godzilla since we have a King Kong. The marketing writes itself. Come on, Godzilla and King Kong. It is right there.
Quick thought on that too, Chris. Like my brother and I were talking about this too. Like the Blazers will be the most popular team in China, right?
Without a doubt.
I mean, I know like the Rockets, they have their and the Chinese viewership numbers, kind of skew towards a couple teams, but I don't doubt they're going to get a little bump, man.
Well, it's no different than look at how massive Seattle Mariner baseball was in Japan when
True.
when Ichiro came over.
Didn't they? I think Nintendo owned them.
Nintendo
Yeah.
was part of that. The ownership stake they had in Root Sports and all that. The ownership stake in the team, and so you just have this massive Japanese influence, and they were huge, right? And also look at Portland. Portland was the favorite team in Bosnia for a minute, right?
It's very true.
I mean, you had the band, I cannot remember their name, who wrote the Bosnian Beast song, which is very unfortunate because I reached out to them and actually got their manager talking to me. We were going to have them call in live from Bosnia for an episode of Rip City pregame show, right? And then Nurk broke his leg, and they're like, "Yeah, it just obviously doesn't make sense now." But
and we all know what happened from there. The N behind Chris's head was replaced with a B, and we look back at his Burke fever.
Burke fever, right?
But no, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there you go. There is that. So again, there's a lot to like about all this, and as a couple of us have pointed out in the chat here, is that Kirk again that says Yong played with Dwap Reith back in China. That's right. For those of you who don't know, Dwap Reith played for the same team in China, and then there is a rumor. I have not taken the time to. I mean, it's not that I've been lazy. It's just I haven't been able to confirm it yet. But there was some talk that it was perhaps Dwap Reith who may have tipped the hat to the franchise that, hey, there's this young guy I played with. I think he's going to be really good.
Okay.
Made them go look. And if that is the case, and then Yong Hansen becomes a megastar, then that just means that Dwap Reith gets a lifetime contract.
He's got to get like a bonus. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, something. No,
and again, I talked about him not being able to play power forward as much. Victor chimes in, says, Yong blocks some perimeter shots inside three-point line. Show has good reaction time. I think that's key. Does have good reaction time. Obviously, I think that's something Donovan Clingan is great at too. Again, it's just the ability to get from the paint to the three-point line is what really differentiates from being able to just be that big in the paint center versus that power forward type that can move around a little bit. It's like Zach Collins. That's why I loved Zach Collins when he was here, because of how quick he was.
Me too.
It was his ability to get from right under the rim to the corner, outside to the top, just very, very quick as a defensive big. And I like that skill set a lot. Regardless, everybody, okay, I'm not going to claim it. I'm not going to be the dummy who tries to pull the wool over your eyes to tell you, like, I saw this coming. I've been watching Yong for years. No, nobody knew. When his name was a draft, there was an audible, wow, inside the media room there at the practice facility, right? Nobody saw it coming, but the Blazers still got their guy. We can say it was a reach all day long. Fans can say it was a reach, but it wasn't. Joe Cronin said it was the top guy on their board. And I think if they draft him at 11, I have a whole different thought on this, because you take a massive risk with no safety net. But you move back 5 spots, get a future first-round pick, load up on a couple of seconds, you have recourse there. I like that. Also, move back 5 spots, a little less of a cap hit in the end. But again, they opened up the door for him to play, and we're going to dive into that as well as some free agency news coming up next on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Okay, Brenden, keep this playing long enough for the chorus for a second, okay? I want to take bets right now. Is this the cut they play in Moda Center every time Drew Holiday makes a bucket? Like right here, Drew just hit a 3.
Oh, that'd be sick. Make it happen, man. We trademarked it here first.
Yeah. For those of you not hearing the music on YouTube, Brenden brought us in with Holiday by Green Day. I don't even think he made the connection in his head. Maybe he just played it because it's a fun song. But that chorus, right? On holiday. They need to play that every single time Drew Holiday makes
Can we pass that along to DJ OG1 or Mark Mason, whoever the powers that be are?
That might be a Todd Bosma thing. I don't know.
Got you.
I mean, they're smart. I mean, come on. Where the Hood at for Rodney Hood was good, even though that song is problematic. But the chorus sounded good. It was good, right? I like the scoot thing, even though it's not scoot that they're saying, but it works. Like, scoot. It just makes sense. It just makes sense. Now, speaking of the things you'll hear in Moda, I did have a good laugh, Brenden, with Joe Cronin after the draft when we were talking about things, because I said to him, I said, Joe, no matter what happens, whether this guy pans out or not, we need to make sure that he starts at least one game so that we hear Mark Mason do an intro in Chinese.
No, for sure. I mean, that would be. I don't want to guess, but I just off the top of my head, I imagine that'd be a bit of a challenge for Mark Mason to kind of learn that. So that'd be unique for sure.
It would be. But I mean, he's done Turkish, right?
Right.
He's Belgian. He does French. He does it all. He does it all. We got thrown. I haven't heard a Chinese one yet.
I mean, I don't know, Chris. Like, again, you talk to someone like me who can barely speak English, properly. Like my 2 years of Spanish in high school, that's long gone in the old brain. But yeah, I mean, I have great respect for those who can command multiple languages, man.
Yes, absolutely. Also, if Yong turns into a star, even if he doesn't, you got to get some of that preseason action over in China, right? We got to start.
Did I see also, Chris, that you were going back to you were talking about him kind of being more one of us. Did I also see that he's plays a good amount of 2K too?
I don't know. Maybe he does.
Okay.
I haven't seen that.
I thought I saw that pop up too. But I mean, it's just what I've been able to listen from the press conference last week and kind of putting pieces together. There is definitely a buzz for this kid.
Yeah.
There's definitely a buzz. I think early on it was kind of like you were saying, I'll admit it. I was shocked. I'm like, who? I was running a hops game. I'm like, who? Okay, cool. Let's do it. But I think there's been some hype now that, like you mentioned the video with Domantas Sabonis, that got a lot of clicks. That's cool. I like it.
No, there's definitely some hype. And, now you get a chance to go out there and, have some fun, man. Have some fun. I like that. And I want to see him thrive. That's what I want to see. He's a good young kid. And one thing that's fun about Blazer fan is sometimes it just doesn't take much, and you gravitate to a guy. And when a guy's wholesome like he was in that press conference, and is just you can tell he's excited. You can tell he's ready to learn. That's a good thing. That's kind of fun. But I do think you're right, because he was asked about his favorite centers, and he was dropping his top 5, and it was like a top 5 that he loves playing as in 2K. So
yeah. I mean, I don't know, that's always it's you wonder when a kid grows up in China and then comes over, what his experience is with the NBA, right? Is it learning guys through the video game? Is it watching the select games that they broadcast on TV? Again, I don't. All those the big thing that happened a couple years ago with Daryl Morey. I don't exactly know what you can and can't consume in China, kind of a thing. But I thought he came over with a really great humble attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of found it interesting, Chris. I had never, and maybe my naiveness a little bit, I've never seen a basketball player press conference start with, having an interpreter too. So that was something new for me, as I was like, wow, okay, so he's really learning, English on the fly, which I think is, like I said, not easy.
Yeah. I said, hopefully it all pans out, and he's wonderful, and hopefully he's closer to, doesn't have to replicate it, but hopefully he's closer to Yao Ming than Yi Jianlian, right? And
you said it.
Yi played for four teams in the 5 seasons he was in the NBA. Thought he was kind of a serviceable rotation guy at times, but just struggled to ever latch on. And again, you hope that Yong Hansen can become the guy and thrive. That's what you can root for. Like once you get past the irritation, right, of thinking your team, you know, went too high or took a risk or whatever, then you just clearly move on to like rooting for the guy to be good.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about, Chris, because you were obviously there at the or at the introductory press conference with Sean Highkin. One of the more interesting questions that got asked, and I apologize for not remembering which reporter did, but was kind of like asking Joe Cronin, like, what do you kind of say to a fan base who's maybe questioning this pick a little bit? And I thought Joe Cronin's response was extremely candid. And Chris, the only thing I could think of was, if it was the previous regime, probably would have been a backhanded comment there.
The previous regime would have, yeah, they would have backhanded you. And
it would have been a backhanded comment.
They would have backhanded you and then told you to accept it and like it. Yeah, I mean, I thought Joe was as honest as you can be in that situation because he has to acknowledge the fan base when that question's asked, right?
Totally.
At the end of the day, though, it is not his responsibility to worry about what the fan base is going to think about his draft pick or his trade or any of that. I think if the GM is spending too much time worrying about that, they're probably not doing their job to the best of their ability. His job is to build the roster the way ownership and the team wants it, right? That's his job. That's his goal. But at the same time, you do have to be cognizant of what the fan base is saying and what they want. You can't necessarily make them the driving force behind your decision, but you have to have the conceptual understanding that your moves will impact them in some sort of way, right? So I think that's the balance, is making the moves that you think are best for the team, but understanding that there's a lot of people who are emotionally and financially invested in this team, and you have to acknowledge that. So I thought he did. And yeah, it's interesting. Timmy in the YouTube chat types in quote 3 seconds, which is funny. It's a story I've told before, how former Trailblazer Ha Sung-jin, 7'3" center from Seoul, South Korea. You guys remember the few years he spent here. He was not very good, but it's funny because I remember going to a game, and it was a year when there was an ice storm, right? And the game did not get canceled, but a lot of people thought it did. So when I showed up and my tickets were in the 300 level, there was maybe 2,500 people in that arena.
Okay.
Right. And so first time out, Todd Bosma gets on the mic and he's like, hey, we're so happy you guys, braved the weather to come down here. We're going to reward you. Get as close as you can. Come on down. Doesn't matter. Take a seat. Right.
You don't see that very often. That's awesome.
The only thing is like you couldn't sit in like the black seats around the rim, which was like the first 3 rows.
Sure.
Right. Those are taken. I think I ended up being like 6th row. It was the closest I'd ever sat as a fan. Right. And to this day, it's the closest I've ever sat as a fan. Now, I've sat closer just obviously through work, but I was working. It's a different vibe, right? Anyway, all I remember from that game was that Ha Sung-jin was playing, and he knew very limited English at the time, too. So all he said all game was 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. And so, like, he was trying to get the ref to call 3-second violations every single play.
Okay, that's
funny. Since there was only like 2,500 people, it was just like echoing through the gym. 3 seconds, 3 seconds. It was hilarious. Also, shout out YouTube megastar Ha Sung-jin, who retired from the NBA, went to YouTube where he makes content in his home country now and has like 450,000 YouTube subscribers.
You said he was South Korean, right?
South Korean.
Oh, okay.
Seoul, South Korea.
Yeah, I mean, the things and I can't say that I did, Chris, but yeah, I mean, like I'm a firm believer that now, and you just look at the not a ton necessarily of Chinese basketball players in the United States. I think we might just adopt, like, China might be adopted as like a Portland like supporting team. So we might have like a whole country start coming after like what the Houston Rockets were, forever ago. Maybe Portland can slide in and take some of that love, Chris.
Hey, keep in mind, Houston embraced that, right? They ended up having the alternate jerseys that had the Chinese lettering across the chest, and obviously I think Golden State has done that too. Obviously, they have the largest Chinatown in the country,
right? Good
huge
call.
Contingent of the Chinese population. And yeah, you get that on your side, and it's good ratings. And honestly, heck, man, make the Blazers go global. Tell me you wouldn't love you take a vacation to China to go see the Great Wall, and you're walking on that thing, and you see a Trailblazers jersey and some stranger yells "scoot" at you or something. Like,
I mean, I'm just saying, if I ever went, I'd have to rock a Blazers jersey now, and odds are I would find somebody who's like, "Oh, look, man, Yong Hansen. That's cool."
Like I said, I don't know if you have experienced. I'm sure you will at some point if you have him. It's like one of my buddies who I went to the University of Oregon with was telling me how he went on vacation years ago to Europe, and he was in like Italy or something like that, and he's wearing a Duck hat, and someone randomly yelled "Go Ducks" at him, and he's like, "I am literally halfway around the world and heard a Go Ducks. You know how cool that is?" So again, maybe the Blazers, go global. A little bit here.
Not quite to that extent. That's pretty awesome, Chris. That's like a half a world away. I still think it was cool, like when I went to like Hawaii, that I got some Go Beavs. That when I went to like Mexico, got some Go Beavs. But Italy, oh man, that's some distance right there.
Absolutely, man. Hey, if you're getting a Go Beavs outside of Corvallis, you're winning. Okay,
this is true.
And I say that as someone who knows wholeheartedly that it took a very long time for the world to hear a Go Ducks outside of Eugene. Okay, so I'm not even doing it to pick on you. I'm just saying that's cool. That's pretty cool. Now, as Victor chimes in on the YouTube chat, which you guys can get in on the chat there, go to youtube.com, type in Rip City Radio, or you can also call in 503-248-0620. He says, if Yong pans out, the Blazers will be the #1 team in China. He might not even have to pan out. If he just plays well right now, there's going to be a lot of people invested, which is always cool, but also comes with a lot of pressure.
So
a lot of pressure.
Can I ask you like a crazy hypothetical, Chris?
Do it.
And again, this is I'm just going to preface this by, and I don't even know if it's possible, but like say like Yong comes out and as a rookie, like let's just say for comparison, like Şengün rookie numbers, like enough for you to say, hey, this kid's got a future, so on and so forth. Who's to say that there isn't somebody rich from China who could come by the Blazers?
Hey,
is that not? I don't know. I don't want to throw that out there. But
I understand that there is a conspiracy theory a little bit that this was part of getting the number up to try to get to the Chinese market invested. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I think,
and I'm not peddling it. I
think the number's going to be high regardless. But I will say that if you look at how a lot of these teams have started to be sold, it's a lot of these investment groups, and there is a lot of money there. And if there is a Chinese-led investment group who wants to get in on the team that has their prized kid in the draft, it wouldn't surprise me. At the same time, I don't know if that's necessarily what you want. You want to make sure that if they do that, they want the team long term. It's not just to make sure that Yong is successful. You want an ownership group that wants to invest in the team, and I definitely think that that's what we're going to get. But I also don't think the Blazers are going to have a very hard time driving this price up at all. I mean, there's a reason Jody turned down 2. And I thought it was crazy a few years ago to even think about it. But you look at what all these other sales are doing. Like, I'm not going to be shocked if the Blazers hit 4 bill.
And I'll be honest with you, Chris, what I mentioned one of the days I was hosting in for Chad, many days ago, where I was like, how would you like to be Glenn Taylor right now and realize that you lost in that arbitration or whatever that was, and Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez bought the Timberwolves for you for 1.5.
Right.
That is a steal.
A steal.
Like, you are walking into the bank and saying, stick them up.
Yeah.
Like,
no, you're right.
That's mind-boggling to me. Is that still? And there's the buyer's remorse. So with that, I mean, and then you add in the Lakers going for near $10 billion. I don't think that's going to drastically, but I'm sure that will move up the Blazers' price a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. But regardless, I hope he does well, and he's going to get on the floor. That's one thing for sure, is because with the moves that have happened, in the last 24 hours, the Blazers buying out DeAndre Ayton, which is, I think there's a lot of good to be had there for various reasons. It does help them out with their finances. You just went from having a massive logjam to definitely having a way for him to get on the floor. And it's interesting, too. I mean, as you point out with Chad earlier, like, you look at Robert Williams. If Robert Williams is a healthy go, and he's played, 26 games here in Portland? If he's a healthy go, I fully believe that if he's here next year, that he's not going to play the front end or the back end of the back-to-backs, much like he did this year when he was healthy, right? Just for injury management. So in those games, you're going to have to get big minutes from Yong. You're going to have to get big minutes from Dwap Breathe, right? You're going to sit and find situations where that works. And Dwap Breathe is a smaller center too. When Kirk brought up like the idea of Young and Klingon, can they play the 4? I don't think so, but Dwop can a little bit because he moves a little bit quicker. So there's ways to get them all on the floor. Now, as Rack chimes in, he says, "Can we talk about how inflated Ayton's defensive rebounds are for calling off his teammates for every mistransition?
I mean,
for every mistransition that was in his vicinity. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, but at least if you're going to call off your teammates to inflate the numbers, you got to do it with some intensity." Like where the broadcast team has to hit the dump button every single time Carmelo Anthony yells FOH.
Oh, it was my goodness.
Which I always cracked up. I was like, can you just play it? Like, can we stop muting the fact that he drops the F-bomb? Because the muting it draws so much more attention to it.
Oh, that was so. I mean, and again, we were all inside, so you knew they were on that dump button. Christmas are like, everybody's at home watching this right now.
Yeah. Now I said, I said back when they got DA and we listened to him at the introductory press conference and all that I hope they never trade him just on vibes alone. He's an all-time vibes guy, right? He seems the locker room loved him. I think reporters loved him. He's kind of the guy, I think he walks into a party, everyone gravitates to, right? And they like him. But there was times on the floor where it just was not 100% effort. Obviously, Coach Billups pulling him out for the lack of spirit, right? Might have been at the Utah game or whatever. It was a bad loss. They pulled him out, right? I mean, if you guys listen to game day in the 5th quarter, I went in heavy on DeAndre Ayton at times, right? Now, second half of the year, I thought the DeAndre Ayton we got was much different than the beginning half of the year. Much more focused, much more engaged. Things were going good. But again, I don't want a guy to be engaged for games, games 41 to 82. I need you to engage from 0 to 82.
I mean, it's understandable. I mean, I remember joking, Chris, like, I'm sure you as well as I, that like, the whole ice storm thing and how DeAndre Ayton found a different gear after the ice storm and after he watched, some Blazer fans maybe be a little critical on social media, like, hey, what are you doing? And I remember like that was kind of like a cute narrative to kind of put it in a word, Chris, and maybe, I think it was wise. They got rid of their most expensive log jammed area. Maybe DeAndre Ayton did want to go, as per reports, he came to the Blazers about a buyout. But at the same token, like you said, effort sometimes, the only thing that I think kind of is a little bit just kind of like deflating, and I'm just curious your thoughts on this, Chris. We now know that maybe Toumani Camara was the real centerpiece of the Dame deal, but DeAndre Ayton was the big centerpiece at the time.
Right.
And now you look at it like that's kind of wiped away. So that's just something that I think is worth reflecting on.
Yeah, it is absolutely. And again, I think that's where this whole buyout thing does sound unfortunate. But you can also look at some of the numbers, right? He's taking a $25 million buyout here. So he is going to be paid 25 mil of the 35 he's owned. And that 10 mil allows the Blazers to have access to the full mid-level exception without going over the tax, right? Had his contract remained the same and then the trade for Drew Holiday goes in, they would be sitting at about 175 mil. And if they use the full MLE, which is 14.1, it would have put them over the tax. They would have become a tax team. You take away the 10 mil, and now they have access to the full MLE, and in doing so would still remain under the tax by about 8 mil. So this is a move that frees up not only his money, but massive money on top of that. And then they don't have to worry about next year going into the tax and being a repeater tax offender, any of that. It helps their books not only right now, but in the future. That's the positive, right? And then, like you said, the Toumani Camara thing. And then I think you can loop in the fact that they got Denny, who's been great for him. But Toumani Camara, we all thought it was crazy at the time because there was a reports that came out that, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant weren't happy that he was involved in the trade because he had been there for a month and they had fallen in love with him. And we all thought that was crazy. And Coach Billups said it in a presser, and you're like, yeah, that's crazy. And then you come to find out it's the truth.
Two's really good.
Joe Cronin went to bat hard to make sure he was involved in that deal. And the Blazers got, right now, their best small forward since Batum left.
Oh, in hindsight, like you look back, Chris, how much different would we judge that situation if DeAndre was it and then maybe a throw-in piece like we've seen in other deals?
Absolutely.
So you get in a throw-in piece and a guy who defensive, all defensive capabilities.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but you know what? Don't go anywhere. Do not FOH, like Carmelo Anthony would say. Stay right here. Plenty of more NBA free agency talk coming up on your home, the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into Courtside Monday. Chris Burkhardt here with you. You can follow me on social media, Chris J. Burkhardt. You can also follow the other voice you've been hearing, super producer Brenden Slaughter at B_slot. All right, we got a little bit more time here. And of course, free agency is in full swing. The moratorium time opened today. And of course, now teams can talk and agree to some deals and before the July 6th date, which is when teams will officially be able to start signing these players to deals. Right now, you've seen a couple dealings throughout the day already, some late ones here. This one just across the wire. Jordan Clarkson intends to sign with the New York Knicks once he clears waivers. He's bought out by the Utah Jazz. The Bucks have agreed to bring back Taurean Prince on a 2-year, $7.1 million deal. Trailblazers legend Mason Plumlee heading to Charlotte, $3.6 million on that deal. Al Horford getting some interest from teams. We'll see where he goes. Luke Kennard, who was linked to the Blazers, very good shooter, as I pointed out with Chad, shooting 43% from beyond the arc for his career, agrees to a 1-year, $11 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks. Couple other deals going down, obviously. Nickeil Alexander-Walker goes to Atlanta as well. Tyus Jones, 1-year, $7 million deal with the Orlando Magic. Obviously, Bruce Brown going back to Denver, which is huge. I think the trade of Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson is a big get for Denver. I think Johnson fits in very well with what they want. Luka Garza, Trailblazers Summer League legend, agrees to a 2-year, $5.5 million deal with the Boston Celtics. Brooke Lopez agreed to a 2-year, $18 million deal with the LA Clippers. I mean, big shout out to Brooke, still getting almost $10 million a year. I think another interesting one here, and a one that's pretty cap friendly, a 2-year, $13 million deal for D'Angelo Russell to head to the Dallas Mavericks. So a very good, fill in until Kyrie can come back. Obviously dealing with the ACL injury, so he's going to miss quite a bit of time. But a pretty good fill in there to pair with Cooper Flagg and company. So a lot of moves going down today. Blazers just haven't been involved in any of them.
Quick, kind of fun question I have for you, Chris. I want to get your take on. Does it just kind of jump back into my memory when you were talking about the moratorium? Do you think we will ever see a Clippers lock DeAndre Jordan in his house situation?
I don't think we'll ever see that again.
Where because again, to this point, you just talked about I'm trying to think, so maybe not one like Nickeil, who was a sign and trade, but any of these reports, theoretically a guy could change his mind.
No,
right?
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. So
that's available.
These are agreed to, but these are not, and we've seen them fall through before. Maybe
that's true.
They don't get the money. As Chad pointed out, you got the Clint Capella and Dorian Finney-Smith going to Houston, and they don't have the money to make both those work. So one of those is likely to be a sign and trade. There's still a lot on the table, and you might see a team, hey, we agree to this player and this player, and then you do the math, they don't have enough money. Keep in mind that there's other moves to come. And yeah, if you can say, so Jordan Clarkson say, or Clint Capella, let's just go for that instance since we talked about that. He can agree to sign, and we know that money needs to be moved around, or it needs to be a sign and trade or something to make it all work. But again, this is all the moratorium period. Nothing is actually, as the young kids say, officially official, right? So some of these deals could fall through. The likelihood of that happening is low, but it could absolutely happen. Trailblazers legend, just fresh across the wire, Trendon Watford, a 2-year, $5.3 million deal to join the Philadelphia 76ers. So there's another deal coming across the wire.
I mean, if I were to ask you this, Chris, are you surprised at a guy that the Blazers ended up moving along for? Joe Ingles at the time signed a $65 million contract today? That was a little surprising to me that Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a brief Blazer. Wasn't just Portland. Portland, I don't think, necessarily saw him in their plans. Neither did Utah. Neither did, I think, one other team before he got to Minnesota. But I found it very, very fascinating. I'm like, oh, yeah, that guy. See, you just keep grinding, man. You can put yourself in a good position.
Hey, man, it's that's what it is. Just keep grinding, because you never know. Some of these guys, they hit late and they hit big enough to make their money, and sometimes they have their slow grind, and it's one big year they get their money, and then out of nowhere they're like, oh, that was that. I don't know what happened there. Didn't work out. You're right, though. He started with the Pelicans, went to Utah, had the cup of coffee in Portland, spent the last 3 seasons in Minnesota, and that's a crazy number to give that guy. Yes, he was good, but we're talking about a 9 point per game, 3 rebound, 2 assist
Maybe
guy.
I'm
But
I'm being crazy, but I'm like saw that number. I'm like, whoo, that guy got
he
paid.
absolutely did get paid. So there is that. So no, you're not crazy thinking that. And again, another player Blazers cast off got 2 year, $5.3 million. So shout out Trendon Watford. But as Sean Hyken pointed out with Chad earlier too, keep in mind the Blazers have 13 men on the roster. They have to have 14 going into camp to start the season. So very likely that there's someone picked up in free agency and or a Jeremy Grant deal that is allowed to come in lopsided, right? Like you can bring in 2 guys for the price of one. You don't have to worry about the whole hard cap thing with Drew Holiday. The hard cap at that first apron set at now, I think 195, which the Blazers aren't going to get close to. You could still use your full MLE, have a gap, and bring in what 5 million, 6 million more than in a Jeremy Grant deal. As I pointed out, I think you didn't bring in negative return for Da. You didn't bring in negative return for Ant because I think there's value in Drew. You could do so with Grant to build out your roster, and it doesn't hurt you too much. So we'll see. I'm very intrigued to see where we go. But it's time to get out of here. My wife has sent me the GIF or the emoji. Time to put a bow on it. We're out of here. We'll be back next Monday. Until then, Rip City, I love you.